Hi, my name is Carmen, and I am an early childhood special education teacher, a life and ADHD coach, and I'm the host of this podcast, Authentically ADHD. I created this podcast to help anyone wondering if they have ADHD, people who have been diagnosed for a while and want some more support and community. I'm here to bring you the latest research on ADHD and neurodiversities while we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of ADHD. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi there, and welcome back to the podcast. How are you? I have really been loving being a few episodes ahead of time. The freedom and time it gives me to do my schoolwork and come up with really good information-packed episodes for you has been really great. So I'm really, really happy you're here, and I appreciate you following, listening, and supporting this podcast. So today we are taking a deep dive into one of the most common frustrating struggles for those of us with ADHD, and that is procrastination. And this does go along with my most previous episode because procrastination can be a result of ADHD paralysis. In today's episode, we are going to explore why procrastination happens, ways that it can show up in our tricky, very sneaky brains, and some actionable strategies, as always, to help you break through that procrastination cycle. So, I always want to be authentic with you. So, one podcast episode will not cure your procrastination. I may be giving you this information and tips, and I just want you to know that I'm not any different than you. It's not coming from an expert at curing anything. Actually, procrastination is not something that we can cure. It's not something we can quote-unquote fix. We can improve our skills at it, and I can tell you I still do struggle with it, and it used to affect my life in the biggest ways, and it really impacted my productivity negatively. Now, although I still struggle with procrastination, it doesn't take over my life anymore. I can recognize it and I can break it pretty quickly now as I've developed and practiced the strategies, which I want to share with you today. Are you ready? Let's get started. So let's start out by breaking down what procrastination is. I want to make this clear. Procrastination is not laziness. Falling into the cycle of procrastination does not mean that you don't care or that you are a bad person. Procrastination happens to all humans because we are human. But for the ADHD brain, procrastination is usually a coping mechanism that we use to deal with big feelings, overwhelm, burnout, avoiding boredom, and or a fear of failure. When someone with ADHD is procrastinating, there's almost always a reason behind it that has to do with emotional dysregulation. Procrastination shows up in a few key ways and for a few key reasons, and it can be incredibly sneaky in the ways it shows up. One of the key reasons procrastination shows up is time blindness. ADHD brains perceive time as now or not now. This means that it's very difficult to estimate how long things will take, which can really lead to rushing last minute, feeling chaotic, and or avoiding the task altogether. We have a really hard time breaking down big projects in order to have them done by the due date. And we also lose track of time when hyper-focused on something we enjoy, putting the important tasks on the back burner. Another key reason is the executive dysfunction that comes along with having ADHD. We have a hard time planning, organizing, prioritizing, and managing ourselves within time. Of course, we have big emotions about tasks. Of course, we avoid them. One of the secrets to overcoming procrastination is accepting that it will always be there. It's always going to creep in, so we just improve noticing it and taking steps to move forward. And part of that is creating systems, using time management strategies, and planning tools. It sucks, I know. We have to work with what we've got. We build in the dopamine, and we work twice as hard at certain things. But remember, we don't have to work twice as hard at other things. Other things feel natural, and they benefit us. Remember that we do have strengths, even though it's frustrating sometimes to have this developmental disorder. The last key reason is emotional dysregulation. Procrastination has deep ties to the emotional impact of it all. Almost anything you would procrastinate about is most likely something that creates a big emotion. And we often avoid tasks because they cause stress and they cause frustration and or they induce boredom. We do not like boredom. Boredom is the epitome of an ADHDer. And so why wouldn't we avoid these things? The more we avoid, though, the harder the task is to actually get started. Hi there, friend. Just your friend Carmen here to remind you or just to inform you that a lot of the information and tips that I give do come from my membership and what I learn in my group coaching program, Focused, by Kristen Carter of the I Have ADHD podcast. If you use the link in my show notes, we both save money. Because, who doesn't need to save money, especially when we're trying to help ourselves? It's helped me improve in so many ways. So if you can afford it, go check it out and check out her free content because it is amazing. All right, back to the show. Speaking of extra supports, I just wanted to tell you all that I've updated my Patreon page to include all of the resources that I've really ever made to be held in one place. Just head to my show notes. The VIP members do get a little extra, but you can also purchase like my brand new Ultimate ADHD Journal and Planner, which I've been using for the past year that has worked. Nothing is priced over $10 and everything is at least 50 to 100 pages that you can download and print. You can get it binded and sent to you, or you can just read it off your screen and use notebook paper. So if you want or need any type of that kind of extra support, just head to my show notes and click the Patreon link to join. I hope to see you in there. So, emotional regulation plays a big part in procrastination. Why? Because when we procrastinate, we often feel guilt and shame. It takes a lot of practicing, regulating, and accepting that ADHD and procrastination just happens, and it's not a failure on your part. Practice self-compassion. This is something that your brain just does. So stop beating yourself up when it happens. Instead, try to see where the emotion is coming from. Practicing mindfulness and self-awareness are great ways to try to start to manage the emotional toll that procrastination takes. Try daily emotional check-ins once or twice a day. Meditating while walking, while you take a shower. Journal about how you feel for 5 minutes. Brain dump or use a specific breathing technique for 2 minutes. This will really help you to break the cycle of procrastination faster because you are making time to pause. So let's talk about some of the sneaky ways that it can show up. One of them is by using procrastivity, where we do the task that does not need to really be done right now. Like, it needs to be done, but it's not the main project or task that is the priority. For example, doing laundry instead of completing the paperwork that's due the next day at your job. The brain tries to protect us in the most sneaky ways. You'll find yourself making every excuse to avoid the task. The trick is to catch these excuses and actually question them. So, now that we've talked about what procrastination is, how it shows up, and why, let's talk about some tips to break the cycle. Remember to take and adjust the tips that work for you and trash the rest. There are a lot of tips that are out there to beat procrastination. I'm just going to share what's worked for me. Again, take what you think will work for you and trash the rest. I have a freebie follow along in the show notes because sometimes this can feel overwhelming all at once. So it's a focus plan to help you try one at a time. So the first tip is to start small. One way to combat procrastination is to start with the smallest task possible. For example, you have to do some paperwork for your job. What's the smallest step forward? Get out the computer, go to a workspace. Use this to gain some momentum to get started. Write a little list of those small steps to start to give yourself that dopamine. The second tip is use accountability. Different ways to include accountability could be reporting back to somebody, body doubling, or asking a partner or friend just to sit with you to help you stay on task. A third tip that I have is the 2-minute rule. Try setting a timer for 2 minutes and tell yourself, I can do anything for 2 minutes. You'd be surprised actually at how much that you will get done. The hardest part about procrastinating is usually getting started. So once we've started, usually we can use hyperfocus to our advantage and continue working. Number 4, make the task more interesting by pairing it with a podcast, a TV show, or talking with a friend. This usually works with tasks that you can parallel task with. I have a podcast about parallel tasking, but you can also gamify the task by building in dopamine rewards for each task you complete before the timer. ADHD brains love competition. This one works for me a lot when I have to do mundane, boring tasks. The number 5 plan is to use a focus plan. Sometimes we procrastinate because we have a hard time figuring out where to start. Prioritization doesn't develop regularly in our neurodiverse brains. So using a focus plan like the one that I attached in the show notes of this episode can really help you get clear about what needs to be done, the steps it takes to get there, and how long each step will take. Sometimes we just need to write out the priorities so we can see it, because our brains cannot naturally prioritize from top down. Last but not least, number 6, build in movement breaks. Our brains crave dopamine, and taking a short walk, stretching, and or doing a few jumping jacks or squats can keep you motivated to continue doing a task, especially if it involves a lot of sitting. The best tip that I can actually give you is to be kind to yourself and to plan for the procrastination to happen. It's going to happen. And it's less frustrating when you can plan for it instead of letting it make you feel frustrated and powerless and or like a failure. So we talked about a lot today. What procrastination is, why it happens, and strategies to break the cycle of procrastination. I have a little challenge for you. Pick one task that you have been putting off and try one of the strategies that you related to in the episode or anywhere that you found any strategy. And I will do that today as well. I hope you learned more about what procrastination is, how it can show up, and took away a strategy or two that you can use to break the cycle of procrastination. Breaking that cycle takes practice, but with the right tools, you can make it manageable. Remember, you are definitely not alone. Millions of ADHDers face these struggles every day. So, if you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend who might benefit. Rate and review the podcast so you can reach as many ADHDers as possible. You can even share it to your social media. Just be sure to tag me so I can shout you out. Stay authentic, my friends, and we will talk soon.